Hi, this is Vicki Hinze, and today we're going to talk about aging parents, unexpected insights, and answers. Um, there comes a point in time when we're rocking along in life, and all of a sudden, or perhaps over time, we realize that our aging parents are declining in health and that they need for us to take care of them now. And we're, for the most part, glad to do that, though it does cause a lot of changes in our lives. Well, if you're on the other side of that and you've done so, you've taken care of your parents, you've watched them pass on, but you have a lot of unanswered questions about it. You've gone through the stages of grief, which you cannot measure on a calendar. I'm sorry. Anybody that says it's a year and that's it doesn't know what they're talking about. It took about 5 years for me to totally come to terms with my mother's passing. And by coming to terms, I don't mean I had answers to all of the questions that were raised in my mind about it, only that I could think of her and remember good times and fun things and little ways that she had that were very endearing and adorable, as well as to feel the sadness of her passing. Well, it's been 10 years now since my mother passed away. My dad passed away in 1988, and mom came to live with us permanently. That worked out great. It was not a problem. But looking back on her death after 10 years, um, it's amazing how many little triggers can come about that still bring specific aspects of her to my mind. And this past weekend, I had an incident that brought some answers to questions that I had still been wondering about and things that had been plaguing me about her death for ever since she passed away. Well, it started out really simply. The kids, my husband and I went to dinner with the kids and our grandkids at a local waterfront restaurant. And, we had the typical dinner, a lot of laughing, a lot of joking around, lots of fun. And I got up from the table and went to the restroom, make a restroom run. And this woman was standing in there with her mother, and the mother was elderly and she was disoriented. Her daughter was really worried and she was exhausted. You could see it in every line on her face. And all of a sudden, I got this flashback. It was just immediate and there was no warning. And suddenly, I wasn't standing before the sink in this restroom in this restaurant watching this daughter tell her mom to stay right where she was and then step into a stall. All of a sudden, I was back in the hospital where my mother was a patient and in the same worried and exhausted state that I had been in then, except there was one difference. Then I was mentally, physically, and emotionally drained. My mom had been sick for a long time, and I stayed with her at the hospital most of that time. So I was really just worn out. Well, now, standing in that restaurant restroom, I was an objective observer, but instead of just being aware of my emotions, I was also aware of both of the emotions of both of these women. The daughter state, I processed that immediately. I'd lived it for 6 months. That's how long my mother was in the hospital. But what I didn't expect was that now her mother's perspective was vivid and clear to me in a way that my own mother's had not been. This woman was weary of her limitations. She was fearful of being too much trouble and being put away in a home to wait for death. She was angry at her body for betraying her by not doing the tasks that she never had to think about before. She just automatically did them. And she was afraid. She was afraid of being a burden to the people she loved, and she was afraid of having lived too long. She missed her deceased husband, her dead children, and her youth. All of these emotions tumbled one over the other through me her being grateful for everything and for nothing at all, for just being. And then feeling selfish for that gratitude because it meant that she lacked the freedom to just live her life. She was confused. She had an overwhelming sense of no value, of not having spent her life wisely by being a better person, of wondering what she wouldn't be able to do tomorrow that she could do today, or even what she wouldn't be able to do later today. All of that was evident in her expression in a flash. They say that the soul is seen in the depths of the eyes. Well, in her eyes, it was definitely seeable. And then her daughter walked out of the stall. She smiled and she asked her mom, "Are you okay?" Tears welled up in the mother's eyes, and you could see her blinking hard, but she smiled brightly and said she was fine. The daughter looked relieved, and so did the mother. And that moment enlightened me. As I said, it's been 10 years since my mom passed away, and during her illness, I knew she had had many of those same feelings that this woman had. We had talked about them. Her death, though, has always perplexed me. You see, she had been released from the hospital and moved to a facility just to regain her strength, after which time she'd be ready to go home. Only she died instead. And there's never been a totally logical explanation for it. At least there hadn't been until that moment standing in that restroom, until I saw all that I did in that stranger's eyes. The woman was not depressed. She still laughed easily and apparently often. But fighting that weakness in her body, her limitations, the loss of so many that she loved, she was just ready to pass on. I thought about this for days, and I applied that insight that I'd gained to other people. Even, I have to say, to my beloved Weimaraner Alex. Alex instinctively knew when she was injured not to walk up the steps. She instinctively knew that when she was too old to go up them anymore, or to jump up on the forbidden, my husband's recliner, which she had done her entire life, she knew when she was unable to do it anymore. And when she was ready, she changed a lifetime daily habit. Rather than going to bed that night in her bed, which was beside mine, she went into a different bedroom all alone, my mother's room, and she lay on the floor at the foot of my mother's bed. Nothing could coax Alex into her own bed, and it was far more comfortable. Realizing that brought to mind sitting at my father's bedside when he was passing away. I willed him to live. Oh God, with everything I had in me, I willed him to live. And when I reached for his hand, he very gently whispered to me, "Don't touch me, Tiger." I didn't understand that then, but after seeing the woman in the restroom, I understand it now. He was ready to go, and he was detaching from those things that are here that made him want to linger in this life. He was just ready. He had been sick for 13 months and was tired of fighting. And all three, my parents and my pet, understood instinctively that to each thing there really is a season, and when it's coming to a natural end, one knows it. They all fought the good fight during the fighting season, but when it had passed, they all just stopped breathing. They just let go. There was no fear, no anger, only peace. They knew instinctively. But I was entrenched in life, and so it took me 10 years to discover answers to those lingering questions and to gain this unexpected insight. And that it came from a simple trip to a restroom in a restaurant and through the faces of strangers proves that everywhere, as well as everything, is fodder. I hope that sharing this with you in some way helps. and I wish for you and yours many blessings.